Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is about something truly unexpected, something that has left an entire nation stunned and emotional. Ukraine can't believe what France just did, and when you hear this, you'll understand why this moment has shaken not only soldiers on the front lines, but families, children, and people who had almost lost hope. This isn't just about politics or military strategy. This is about humanity, sacrifice, and a bond that grew out of the ashes of war. It began on a freezing morning in Kiev. The sun had barely risen, and the streets were quiet except for the distant echoes of sirens that had become part of everyday life. In a small cafe near the central square, a young woman named Katerina sat by the window, clutching her phone, scrolling through the latest news. Her brother, Dmitro, was serving on the Eastern Front, and every message from him was a lifeline. That morning, as she read the headlines, one line made her gasp and drop her coffee. France announces unprecedented support package to Ukraine. She couldn't believe it. The article claimed that France had just approved a new wave of aid and direct assistance, including advanced defense systems, humanitarian teams, and even a joint reconstruction plan that would begin immediately. For many Ukrainians, France had been a friend, yes, but this level of commitment was beyond anything anyone expected. Just days before, the situation at the front lines was deteriorating fast. Russian advances in the eastern regions had pushed Ukrainian troops to their limits. Ammunition was running low, power grids were collapsing, and winter was closing in. The soldiers were brave, but fatigue and despair were heavy on every face. The world seemed to be moving on, the news cycles were quieter, and global attention was drifting elsewhere. Then out of nowhere came France's announcement. In Paris, the world watched as President Emmanuel Macron stood before cameras and made a statement that would echo through Europe. France stands not behind Ukraine, but beside Ukraine, he said. From this day forward, we are not observers. We are partners in their fight for freedom. His words were followed by the reveal of a massive support initiative, a program that included advanced anti-air defense systems, armored vehicles, medical evacuations, and a commitment to deploy thousands of French engineers and medics to help rebuild Ukraine's shattered cities. It wasn't just a speech. Within hours, planes loaded with supplies began taking off from French air bases. Back in Ukraine, the reaction was emotional. Videos of Ukrainian soldiers watching the announcement spread across social media. Many broke into tears. One viral clip showed a group of exhausted troops huddled in a trench, watching Macron's speech on a small tablet. When the translation reached the part about standing beside Ukraine, one soldier whispered, "They remembered us." Another clenched his fist and smiled for the first time in weeks. The trenches, for that brief moment, filled not with fear but with hope. Katerina called her brother that night. His voice came through a weak signal, but she could hear the emotion in it. "Did you see what France did?" he asked. "They're sending systems that can actually stop those missiles. They're sending medics. Can you imagine, sis? Maybe we'll make it through this winter." She could hear the tremble in his voice, part disbelief, part relief. For months, he had been trying to stay strong, hiding his exhaustion behind humor. But now his tone carried something new, genuine optimism. At the same time, in a small French village near Lyon, an old man named Henry watched the news with tears streaming down his face. He was a retired army medic who had served in peacekeeping missions decades ago. He couldn't stay still. "I know what it's like," he said to his wife. "They need people who can help rebuild hospitals, restore power, care for the wounded. I'm going." His wife didn't stop him. She simply nodded, packed his bag, and hugged him goodbye. Within a week, Henry was on a plane heading east, one of hundreds of volunteers France had rallied for the mission. When Henry arrived in Lviv, he saw destruction everywhere: shattered glass, collapsed buildings, and the tired faces of people who had endured too much. But he also saw something else: courage, resilience, and an unbreakable spirit. He joined a team of Ukrainian doctors working in a makeshift clinic. They treated soldiers, civilians, and children injured in airstrikes. Despite language barriers, they understood each other perfectly. Pain, hope, and kindness didn't need translation. Word of the French volunteers spread quickly. They were repairing bridges, clearing debris, and delivering food to frontline towns. French engineers worked side by side with Ukrainian workers, rebuilding schools in areas that had been bombed. Videos began circulating online, showing French and Ukrainian flags flying together on construction cranes and medical tents. Merci France became a trending phrase across Ukrainian social media. For the first time in a long time, there was a sense that the world hadn't forgotten them. Dimitro's unit eventually received the new French defense systems. When the first Russian drone swarm attacked their sector, the equipment performed flawlessly. The soldiers watched in disbelief as every incoming drone was intercepted before reaching the ground. Dimitro later wrote to his sister, "We finally slept last night, Katya. For the first time in months, we slept without fear." The bond between France and Ukraine deepened. French citizens began hosting Ukrainian refugees again, donating supplies, and organizing fundraisers for rebuilding efforts. Even French celebrities and athletes took part, raising awareness and money. A famous French singer released a song titled Libet pour Kiev, which went viral, playing in cafes and on radios across Europe. The lyrics spoke of standing with those who fight for freedom, no matter the cost. It became an anthem of solidarity, but not everyone welcomed France's decision. There were critics, political opponents, analysts warning of escalation, and voices saying France was risking too much. Yet, for every critic, there were thousands of supporters who believed that doing nothing was no longer an option. The French public saw the faces of Ukrainian children, the devastation of cities like Mariupol and Kharkiv, and they understood. This was not just Ukraine's war, it was a fight for humanity itself. Months passed, and the French presence in Ukraine grew stronger. The reconstruction teams began transforming ruins into livable spaces. One school rebuilt with French funding was reopened in Bucha, a town once synonymous with tragedy. At the reopening ceremony, children sang the Ukrainian anthem while French engineers stood beside them, some wiping away tears. A banner hung above the stage read, "Together we rebuild." Henry, the old medic, became somewhat of a local hero. Every morning he visited hospitals, bandaged wounds, and handed out candy to children who had lost everything. He often said, "I came to give hope, but they are the ones who give it to me." When he received a letter from President Zelensky thanking him for his service, he smiled softly and said, "It's not me. It's all of us. It's France and Ukraine together." Back in Kiev, Katerina stood one evening on her balcony, watching the city lights flicker to life. She could hear laughter from the streets below, something she hadn't heard in months. Her brother was due home soon for leave, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to dream about peace. She looked at the stars and whispered, "Thank you, France." As winter ended and spring arrived, flowers began to bloom again across Ukraine's war-torn fields. The French aid convoys were still rolling, construction cranes still swinging, and the partnership only grew stronger. Ukraine wasn't just being helped, it was being lifted back to its feet with dignity. And in every rebuilt street, every reopened hospital, and every saved life, there was a silent message: hope is stronger than war. By the end of that year, President Zelensky visited Paris to thank the French people. In his speech, he said, "When the world doubted us, France believed. When we were on our knees, France extended a hand. This bond will be remembered for generations." The applause that followed was thunderous, not just in that grand hall in Paris, but in homes across both nations watching live. The story of France's support became more than politics, it became a reminder of what unity means. It showed that even in a world divided by fear and conflict, compassion can cross borders. From the trenches to the classrooms, from the medics to the children, the connection between Ukraine and France became a symbol of light in dark times. And as the people of Ukraine looked toward the horizon, they carried a newfound belief that no matter how devastating the storm, there would always be those willing to stand beside them. France had proved that friendship was not measured by words but by action, and that courage was contagious. So when people say, Ukraine can't believe what France just did, it's not just about aid or weapons, it's about hearts, humanity, and a moment when the world remembered what it means to care. Would you like me to extend this story with a powerful closing reflection to bring it to a full 15 min, it pacing about 1 0 more words?